Who loves soup season? This girl! Welcome to the Silly Kitchen. If you are new here, my name is Sylvia and I love a good home-cooked meal, especially when it is easy to make. Today I want to show you my recipe for a delicious corn soup, or corn chowder some people call it, but I'm not sure soup or chowder and the exact differences, but call it whatever you want. It is a bowl of deliciousness. We only need a few ingredients to make this delicious soup, so I'm going to walk you all through it, and we're going to head over to the stovetop where we've got our soup pot getting nice and hot, and I'm going to start it off with a little bit of butter on the bottom of that pot. Let's get that melted, and we're going to add in a whole bunch of diced onions. Now, I usually use one large onion for this, but if you have smaller onions, maybe double up and use two. So what we're doing here is we're starting to build the flavor with this butter and onions. So we want to let those onions cook down until they're a little bit translucent and soft, so that kind of delicious flavor starts oozing out before we go on to the next step, which is adding, of course, the main ingredient, corn. Now, I'm using corn on the cob and I'm cutting off my kernels and using them in this recipe, but don't fret if it is not corn season and you still want to make this soup. It is absolutely all right to use either frozen corn or canned corn. You go ahead, whatever you have, it will work in this recipe. For the purpose of this recipe today, I am using 4 corn on the cob and taking the corn off the cob. So 4 off the cob into the soup pot. I don't know how to say that properly. You let me know in the comments if there's a proper way to put that sentence together. Either way, we will continue on. The next thing that I want to do is get my liquid in there. So I'm going to be using 4 cups of either vegetable stock or chicken stock, your choice. This can be a vegetarian dish if you want to use the vegetable stock, or whatever you have that's available. Chicken works awesome too. Make sure you season with salt and pepper. Add as much or as little as you want. I love a little bit of pepper, or extra pepper I should say, in this recipe, just because of that sweetness of the corn. It'll balance it out a bit. The other thing we need to do here is thicken up our soup a bit. So what I'm gonna do is use about 2 heaping spoonfuls of flour and mix it with a little bit of water in another bowl. Get that all nice and smooth, no chunks, before we add it into our warm soup. You should allow your soup to sit about 15-20 minutes cooking out before you do this step, and then add it in slowly and mix it so that there are no clumps in this soup. We're just using this to thicken it up a little bit. Making soup is all about building flavor. So at this point, we have built a really nice base. We're gonna add in our next ingredient, which is potatoes, and I like to dice them up and have them a little bit chunky. Another tip when making things like soups or just cooking in general is try to have your ingredients cut into similar sizes. That way they cook out the same. Do you know what I'm trying to say there? I hope I explained that. So if you put in a big chunk of potato and then a little chunk of potato, the little chunk's gonna cook a lot faster than the big chunk. So if you cut them evenly, you're gonna have an even distribution of heat, which will mean that all your potatoes will be cooked at the same time. Okay, I think I explained that properly. I hope I did. And if it was useless information, that's okay. I'm gonna continue on. We're gonna throw in a couple bay leaves, cover up our soup, and let it cook out just on a low simmer for about half an hour. Give your soup a little bit of a taste. Make sure that you've seasoned it accordingly. Potatoes love salt, so you might need to put a little extra in there, especially if you have a homemade stock that you use that doesn't have a lot of sodium in it. Just give it a taste here before we finish it up, because our final ingredient is just adding a little bit of milk. Milk? What? Don't we want a velvety, creamy soup? Okay, well, if you want to use heavy cream, go for it. I never have heavy cream in the house and I hardly ever use it, so milk works for me. You pick, it's your soup, whatever you want. That is it. You are ready to eat your soup. And I mean, maybe test out your potato and make sure that your potato cooked out nice and soft. I even like to overcook it a little bit because then it just gets really sort of mushy and helps with the thickness of this chowdery soup. But I absolutely love making this. I haven't made it a lot, and that's why it's only now arrived into the recipe category, but oh man, I will definitely be making this again because it is a hit. The other thing is, when you make a big batch of soup like this, freezing it is a wonderful option in, you know, containers where you can have a cup or two, where you can pull it out on one of those days where you're like, I want a bowl of delicious homemade soup, but I don't want to stand in front of the stove and make it. You already did. Pull it out of the freezer, give it a warm up, and you are good to go. Those soups, usually when I freeze them, they're good for 2-3 months, maybe even longer in the freezer, but don't let them sit that long. Enjoy them. We know that cold weather is coming, especially where I am in Canada. It is gonna get cold, so these are some staples that I really love to have, and there will be many more soup recipes coming your way. Hit that subscribe button, hang out with me, and thank you so much for tuning in.